with EntreConf. Right, we got a big round of applause, come on. I have, Nick, I don't know if you want one of these, but I'm going to have one of these whilst you're talking. I have two chocolate brownies here, but I'm going to put it here. I didn't really have enough earlier. So I'm going to come now to, let me grab that and grab that. Here we go. I'm going to come now to Nick Hounsfield. Nick, if you come forward, please. There you are, didn't even see. No, you're that way around. Grab a big round of applause to Mr. Nick Hounsfield. So there we go. So whilst, of course, there we are. Look, there's you behind. Oh, a glamorous-looking man. Whilst the story of the wave is well known, I'd like to reprise some of that story. I'm going to frame it from a personal point of view. First of all, briefly explain what the wave is for the two people here who may not know what it is, and I'm going to come to the personal stuff.
Yes, the wave is a giant slice of ocean sat inside, in the middle of the North Bristol countryside. So it's absolutely all about surfing and waves, but equally around health and well-being, getting people outdoors, into nature, and having a lot of fun together.
Having a lot of fun, and from a sort of blue health point of view, I guess, is maybe slightly jargony, but that is the territory in which you're operating. And the London site, or the Enfield site, this was the part of the vision succeed, of course, in the Bristol area, and then roll elsewhere. So where are you up to with that?
Yeah, so we're just going through the pre-planning stage for London. Look at the Enfield site still. It's got a few challenges, but mainly around sort of contaminated land and things like that. But actually, whole thing, some things like COVID and economic downturn means that there isn't such a gold rush to go and do it so quickly. So we've actually taken the last couple of years to really make sure that we're successful as a business in Bristol, and then be able to roll out.
All businesses face their challenges, few on such a scale as Nick with the wave, both in Bristol and broadly subsequently in Enfield and beyond. But I do just want to dwell on this point. When it comes to challenges, just imagine this. You have spent years creating this idea, years persuading investors to back this idea, years persuading, God knows, councils, planners, etc., 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 that it should be a good idea. And then, February 2020?
Yep.
You had a stroke. I mean, clearly a very fit man, a young man, had a stroke, and such that you couldn't speak, you couldn't hear, you couldn't talk.
Yep.
And then there was COVID. Remember February 2020? This was March 2020. How many barriers to success can any of us ever imagine? And how did you, Nick, by the way, you can have a brown if you want, how did you get through that as an individual? That's the most extraordinary triumph over adversity, frankly, I've heard.
I didn't really have any choice. I had to, I guess it was around making sure, having young kids, wife, family that needed me, still needed support from me, was the reason why I battled hard to try and overcome, particularly my speech, getting that speech back again, and just feeling it's really weird when you have something really health-wise critical like that, is that there's a real moment in time where you've got to feel like you totally feel like I've got to survive. I've got to become the best I possibly can, so that I can continue life in the way that I want to. I've still got so many ambitions, so many things I still want to see, and this real moment in time where you're going, right, I need to fight back against this. You have to be kind to yourself, because you can't rush recovery from something like a stroke.
Had you been, if not unkind, had you pushed yourself too hard prior to that? I don't wish at all to, if it sounds a bit contributory, it's not that. I just want to get a sense of what you were like as an individual.
Yeah, definitely. I think I just didn't know when to stop, and it was almost like my body was just saying, okay, you have to stop. Something has to stop you, and it was probably only something like that potentially could do that.
Knowing Nick a little, I have to say that it's about the only thing I could possibly imagine that might ever stop you in pushing on in your extraordinary dreams. We're, all power to you with the wave, but we want to come on to this. Just take a look at this. We're going to show a couple of images here of this one blue world. Nick, just talk through your vision, your start point, your vision, what this sort of represents. We've got a slowly rolling loop of imagery, so let's have a look.
Yeah, so the whole point. So my background it was in healthcare, making sure that we get as many people outside into nature, exercising, connecting with each other, connecting with the planet, and try to see if you can improve people's health and well-being to create a happier, healthier world, basically.
As small as that. That's the scale of ambition.
Let's keep it in this planet at the moment. And then, without a doubt, the sort of scale of the ambition grew to what was the wave, and the wave is delivering, 200,000 people walk away with smiles on their faces, having an impact in their health and well-being, whether they're paying customers or come via our social impact programs. And I go, yeah, that's great, but I guess it's about frustration, and the frustration for me is then wanting people to reflect how happy they are when they get back home, and that spills over into their work life and their home life. And I was going, well, there's a real disconnect there, and it's a bit like when we go on holiday, where we have just the best time, hopefully, on holiday, and you're going, oh, I'm going to read more when I get home, and I'm going to, I'm going to exercise more and eat well and all the rest of it, and it just goes out the window. And it's because we're not set up as an environment in our social fabric, but also even the houses that we live in and the places that we live in, is that we haven't set ourselves up to succeed in that. So I sort of went back to the drawing board and said, well, why is that? Why are we not bringing out the best in each other? And so I started to look at this sort of blue zone theory, which there's a really good Netflix documentary around it. This blue zones, which is basically people who are living happier, healthier, longer. That's a real longevity hotspots around the world. They're in Costa Rica, Greece, Sardinia, Okinawa in Japan, and California. And why are they so happy, so healthy, and living so much longer? And of course, there's things. Climate helps. We're not blessed with that here, but there are some other things. So the way we eat, how we're connected to water, to the food and the land. And the most important thing that came from that research study was about connectedness with people. And you can really see how the social fabric that we have and set up in the UK is about having closed doors the whole time, is that we're sort of very insular. And we've seen when we go through a pandemic, when we're not connected to each other and we're not connected to nature, how destructive that is for our physical and emotional well-being. So right there, like how do we deal with that? Well, there's another thing that we need to layer on top of that, and it's very sort of politically, it's a hot potato at the moment, which is around the way that we build houses. So we have to suddenly build, 100,000 houses within 6 months or what have you. And so there's a real gold rush of people wanting to just build them, and they're generally not healthy places. The way that they're built, they're not brilliant for the environment. They quite often get value engineered down. It's like, how can we create a cohesive vision for a community, building communities that actually just delivers what it says it's going to deliver? So when you go through a planning permission, you actually deliver what you plan to do. Because so often, particularly in the housing industry, it's promise everything and we will deliver the bare minimum to be able to maximize profits. So to me, it feels like there's a real opportunity now to sort of turn that on its head a little bit. Like, we know what we need to build in these communities. Why don't we just do it properly? As simple as that. Just be a good business, good humans, trying to impact people's health and well-being and do no harm to the planet. So it's very, very early stage at the moment, but we have got amazing landowners, we've got funding, got an incredible team that I'm working with on it, and hopefully over the next year you'll see a lot more around it.
Talk a little bit about the detail, caveat that this is early stage, and this is one of the reasons why we wanted to end, or at least focus on this as an area, because it is an emergent business, and all businesses, of course, go through different iterations. But you say landowners and funding, a little bit of a flesh on that bone. No? You're not going to?
No, I can. Okay. Yeah, we've got, even around the wave in Bristol, we've got significant landowners around there who love what we've created there. We've brought value to that land. But they can also see that there's a real, some of the issues that we have as a business at the Wave are issues that we have in the local community. So the lack of decent transport, public transport, the lack of access to some kind of renewable power. And you start looking at, the challenges that we have a business at the Wave, and you look at the challenges that there are at the communities around there, you go, well, how can we solve some of those issues? There's Pilning Station, which has been closed down. Like, if we could reopen that and create a transport hub so that actually people can start to move around there in a sustainable fashion, and that allows, businesses to thrive there as well. It brings in the visitor economy to us, but also wild places, the Bristol Conservation Park. Those kind of things. So it's starting to look at sort of issues that we have as a business, but also the people that we live and immersed with. A lot of those people work at our place as well. So we're trying to overcome some of those barriers to entry.
And when you mentioned in passing about funding, could you give a quantum or the types of, if not online now as it were, but access to funding that you intend to have in short order?
Well, it's really interesting because with the Wave started off with a kind of crazy vision, had to basically
sorry, and this isn't.
No, it isn't. Actually, it isn't. It really isn't.
Right, okay.
It's a crazy vision, never been done before,
tick.
Yeah, and we had to de-risk it. So get planning, get land, do everything until we could go and get some funding because we had to de-risk it.
Yeah.
Whereas, what's the risk here? We're talking about building homes. Everybody needs to build homes. We know that there's a housing crisis. There is access to capital to build homes. It's a very, very tried and tested model. What would be the unusual thing is actually delivering what you set out to deliver. That's the unusual bit, and actually that's just about being a good business that's delivering on your your planning permissions.
Picture paint a little bit. I don't know what's in everyone's minds at this point. Is it some sort of eco-village? Is it some vaguely Poundbury type of thing, the Prince Charles piece, or is it? What would it actually look like? We're talking about a new village. Is that the sort of?
We're talking about new creating
clusters.
New clusters, new communities that are actually being done sensitively with a very clear understanding of putting in blue and green infrastructure in there.
Can you explain a little bit more?
So blue and green infrastructure, making sure that we are increasing the biodiversity of the land that we will take up, making sure that we've got access to blue spaces, so it could be swimming lakes, for some places it might be putting in another surf lake, who knows. But it's having access to water, because we know that people are fitter, healthier, happier when they're in and around water, and also around green spaces. Those kind of things normally get whittled down through planning, because actually you could put another load of boxes in there.
And you trade off and reduce, and then
exactly.
Yes, yeah.
So that's going to be a really important part of it, is that sort of blue-green infrastructure built in and absolutely deliver with that. The other thing is around affordable housing and social housing. So we're working with some people who will help us fund the social housing bit, so that actually we don't end up, like we've always said with the Wave, if it ends up being a middle-class white playground, we'll have failed. It's the same with this. Is if it's the same people having the same conversations around the same pub or wherever it might be, then that's not what we're in it for. It's about building a community, all ages, all backgrounds, and all abilities.
Realistically, and I'm using the word fairly advisedly, I hope. Realistically, what might, I don't know, a year or 2 or 3 years look like to you? Give us some, none of this is exactly quantifiable, but some idea of amount of houses, perhaps, as one reference point. Give us an idea of what it might look like.
Yes, and we've already, the team have already secured planning permission for 4 or 5 housing developments already around the UK. So they're funded and they're ready to go. They just need to be put into this sort of the vision, a more cohesive vision about what it could and should look like. Some of the bigger housing projects are sort of 3,000 to 4,000 houses. So they're big developments, and they're either going through planning stages or being added to the local plan.
Those are in train at the moment. Very, I can't do the maths, but very roughly, what's the sort of quantum in train at the moment? Is it sort of 7, 8, 10,000 or something, or?
It's nearly 20 developments are ongoing at the moment, with a pipeline of easily into the hundreds. So yeah, there's a real pipeline there that we can go at.
Where's the money coming from?
Some really passionate people who really believe that we can make a change in the world, but also have a real go at this housing market.
I'm actually going to pause at this point. Whilst I'm sort of attempting to process all of this. Please, if anyone's got a question either in detail or in principle about this, please do ask now.
Well,
are these
well, that's the wave.
Yeah. Were the others sort of indicative, or are they they're part of your plan?
Yes, I'm not. It's almost like a bit of a mood board about what the interesting thing. The next harebrained thing after...
I haven't said harebrained, don't look at me like that.
After what I'm talking about now is also about how you retrofit this into communities that are already existing.
Right.
Because actually the most sustainable thing is to try and reuse current, cities, towns where people are already living, and be able to impact that. But
just part of that, what might that be, for example?
That, for instance, is a drawing that we did for an eco town in the Claylands down in Cornwall. So yeah, that's already in train. That's being built right now.
Is this?
Wow. Yep.
What's your involvement with that? Is this a company that you've set up and you part out? I mean, how does it work?
I was asked to get involved.
Advisor, or
was asked to get involved to be able to do the sort of visionary piece, to be able to go, right, I guess it's the what if bit. It's what if. I like those. That's the thing that I always ask. It's like, what if we could do this? What are the barriers to doing it? I'm not so worried about the barriers up front. It's around like, what if? Imagining something that actually that all of us would want to live in. Like how can we really change the way that we live, work and play, that is much more productive for all of us, that we're happy, healthy and it does no harm to the environment.
Pretty much the first session we ran at EntreConf back in those baleful days of 2021 was called What If, and it's exactly that sense of what about? Yeah. Why not? I'm afraid I can't quite see. I think it was at the back, please. And could you say your name and company?
Hello, my name's Patch, and my company is Push That Productions. Beautiful chat, loving it. I guess what I was wondering is, I definitely thought it was a good point when you said not just trying to make it like another white middle class space and expand beyond that. How would you, in this case, actually go to make it more accessible for a multitude of people, including people from unrepresented and backgrounds where there's not as much access to like all these things like land and I guess even healthy lifestyle?
Yeah,
good question.
It's a really good question. We've done it at the Wave to a fairly decent extent, where we don't believe that we're the experts. I'm a white middle class guy. I don't presume to know everything, the challenges and the opportunities that are out there. So what we did with the Wave, for instance, is that we tapped into the local communities of people who are on the ground, like struggling with those challenges. There might be cultural challenges, it might be, financial challenges. Could be a whole wealth of challenges that they're wanting to overcome, and then you partner with those organisations. So it goes a little bit, and I'm sure it's been talked about a fair amount over the last couple of days, is making sure that people know I don't know the answer, but bringing in the right people. That is without a doubt, that's my real superpower, is to be able to find the people who know the answers and kind of not be the smartest guy in the room ever. Just bring together people who will know. So it's making sure that we're tapping into communities to make sure that we're building something that is something that is needed and wanted by whatever particular sort of underrepresented groups that there might be.
And just one point relating to Ellie's session just now about networking with NatWest. how do you find those people? How do you make sure that whether it's a different ethnic minorities, whether it's different social groups, or alternatively whether it's different partners, visionary and so on? What's your day like, Nick? Basically?
Good question.
Make it up.
It is networking. You know, I'm without a doubt one of the most socially awkward people I know. I don't even like to talk to myself.
Hello. It's the even that worried me there.
But equally, knowing that there is amazing resources out there. We have got, particularly Bristol, we have got such a multitude of diverse thoughts, ideas, cultures, all of it, and it's just tapping into that. So making sure that finding business leaders, finding community leaders, thought leaders within the realms, and just again, there's no conversation not worth having. And over particularly building the Wave, it's nearly 10 years of sort of telling people what I want to build, and then people came to me and say, well, I know that, for instance, I know that you really, Nick, you're really interested in disability and how you could improve access. And then being able to talk to them and say, look, who would you talk to about making sure that our infrastructure is set up for that? And the same from a cultural perspective is, working. I did a lot of work with Babasa and some other really cool organisations in Bristol to make sure that we are ready to accept people who are culturally different to us. And surfing is very much, back then was very much male, blonde hair, blue-eyed boys, and that was a reflection across the whole of the surf culture. Whereas now we've got so much more diversity, even in our lake, and I think we can do exactly the same through partnerships, building these communities.
Talking partnerships, one other P is politicians. What either local or regional or actually national engagement have you have, and how much do you need to make this vision happen?
It's a really good point. So we've spoken to local politicians in the areas that we're looking at, but I think that there's a real opportunity to go higher up on that. I think potentially we're going to have a new Labour government where they're going to have to hit some real targets, particularly around housing. And I think there's a real chance to be able to say, well, this is something that you can pin your mast to, because they'll probably be around for a couple of terms. So there's a chance for somebody else to kind of do the hard work in terms of delivering something that they can go, well, look, if you can. For us, it's mainly around making sure that we're in the right rooms with the right people.
For investors, is this exclusively commercial, or is it partly philanthropic?
I would say it's very legacy. So this is something, it's looking at, and to me, this is, I guess, the thing that I always do, is try to look at that long-term vision. So trying to think about sort of generational thinking, rather than, what would be the absolute opposite would be sort of private equity, turn a business around in three years.
We can all see that is absolutely not your world.
Yeah.
Okay, last question from the audience, because we're nearly cooked. Yes, I can see a hand up in the middle. Yeah, please, we get the mic over to the middle. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Gemma. It's an amazing vision. How do you take something so big and beautiful like that and then kind of break it down to the next few steps that you need to do to get action and just some pace to get moving, because it's so inspiring and it's so big. How do you stop it from feeling overwhelming when you're so clear and you've got to kind of bring so many people and partners with you?
Yeah, great question. It's about me not leading the charge on it. That's the main thing, because otherwise it will become really lovely and aspirational, but it needs to be delivered. So the main thing for me is making sure that I've surrounded myself with people who are like the most amazing project managers. They're just going, right, that's all great, that's brilliant, right? How do we, exactly as you say, break it down? What are we going to be doing today? What are we going to be doing tomorrow? And build towards that. And not get distracted, because that's the thing for me, is that it's very, very easy for me to just start magpieing, going, oh, that's a really good idea, that's a really good idea. So having that discipline, and that discipline comes about having a team around you that makes sure that you get reined in at the right time, but also allowed to be able to talk and think big whenever you want to, not whenever you want to, at the right times. So yeah, having partners alongside me who've just got that experience to be able to do it, and yeah, it's about those partnerships and trusted partnerships. Yeah.
One last point. You've talked, Nick, about the importance of fearlessness for entrepreneurs. Frankly, you're right at the very furthest end of fearlessness, I suspect, but all entrepreneurs have to be at least brave. Have you always been fearless?
Yeah, if you ask my mum, yeah. Yeah, she's got a lot of grey hairs, too early from me. Yeah, always have been fairly fearless. I think goes with the territory of like surfing and extreme sports. So yeah, I think I've always not been afraid to take a challenge, and I feel happiest in my slightly uncomfortable. Even doing stuff like this, as when you're socially awkward, like suddenly thinking, yeah, let's suddenly talk to a whole room full of people. Yeah. But actually, I quite like that sort of that nudge the whole time to go put yourself in an uncomfortable place and see how you respond.
You're not putting yourself, at least from our point of view, not putting yourself in an uncomfortable place. Nick, you're certainly not putting anyone here in that, because what you're doing is inspiring. It's making all the dots connect about what it is to be an entrepreneur, to have a vision, frankly, a grand vision, an extraordinary vision. With the track record of the wave, with the start point that I mentioned about the personal awful situation you found yourself in, and overcoming that with the wave. That grand vision we've just heard, we've had a tiny bit of mood board flavour of it. It is quite remarkable. It will be, I'm not going to say would, it will be transformative. And I'm sure everyone here, if they can play a part, they will come forward to you. But all of us here will be cheering you on, Nick. Congratulations on the vision and all of that for the delivery of that vision in the coming years. Nick Hounsfield, please. Thank you very much.